Hello and welcome back to goldstocktrades.com. Today we have with us Roger Payne. Roger Payne is Vice President of Pele Mountain Resources. Pele Mountain can be traded as GEM on the venture, and it also can be traded as GOLDF on the OTC. Roger, you have experience, decades of experience at Elliot Lake. Can you talk to us a little bit about your experience working up in what was once called the Uranium Capital of the world?
Yes, certainly. You know, I'm a Brit, as you can tell from my accent here. You know, I was born and raised in England, had my education in England, and subsequently actually traveled to several places in the world on major civil engineering projects. Really, I'm a civil engineer. I came to Canada in 1981 to join what was then Rio Tinto Zinc's Canadian arm, which was Rio Algom and Elliot Lake, who owned large tracts of country there, large tracts of mining claims associated with uranium, which had been an important resource during the 1950s. And who were then reactivating mines and expanding mines in Elliot Lake to meet the global demand for power, alternative sources of power generation. So we're providing uranium for the nuclear power industry. Yeah, so I came to Canada in 1981 to Elliot Lake with my wife and my 3 children, and joined a very special community there, you know. So we had a population then in Elliot Lake of around 25,000 people, I think, and things were buzzing again. My role was really to work within the engineering department initially on the actual reactivation and expansion of several of the mine operations that had either been closed during the 60s. Or have been reduced in capacity. So I worked in the engineering department for a couple of years, and subsequently, as the engineering was completed, the mines were reactivated, I actually moved from engineering out to operations and spent the next 15, 18 years actually within operations, on the mine sites at 3 of the mines. So Rio Algom then had, during the 80s, 3 operating uranium mines in Elliot Lake. I worked at all 3 of them in various capacities, from being starting off as a plant engineer and eventually going to a plant superintendent, working underground and on the surface. And eventually in the 1980s, when it became apparent that, in fact, Rio Algom would be unable to secure additional contracts once their existing ones were completed in the early 90s, we needed to look at actually closure of the mines and decommissioning, which was going to be a significant effort, both for Rio Algom and the other mining company in Elliot Lake, and, of course, a significant blow for the community itself, which had grown up solely for the purpose of supporting the mining industries. So from 1988 approximately, I became involved in the decommissioning team, which is quite a large team. Eventually I became manager of decommissioning, worked through the 90s until in 1996 I was actually made general manager for the whole of Rio Algom's operations in Elliot Lake, continuing doing the managing the closure process, by which time in 2001 I'd reduced Rio Algom, we had reduced the workforce in Rio Algom from what was about 2,500, 3,000 people in 1990 to we were down to 3, myself and 2 others. And eventually, of course, I worked myself out of a job. So in 2001, I parted company with Rio Algom. However, it was an exciting time all the way through there. The actual mining operations were incredible operations, very well recognized as one of the best mining communities anywhere in the world. The safety conditions at the mines, the treatment of the workers this was the place. If you were going to be a miner, this was the place to be. And that continued during the closure. So we had a major task on our hands, actually closing the mines, because not only did we have the 3 actual operating mines that we were closing, Rio Algom had retained ownership and actually all the service facilities and the mine operations at the other 8 or 9 operations that had been operating during the 1950s. So the actual closure addressed 13 mine sites in total. We had a lot of work to do, and it was very well done. We worked very cooperatively with a huge suite of government agencies, both provincial and federal. At the beginning, of course, all the agencies were incredibly concerned. Rio Algom as a company was concerned about the potential financial liability of this enormous task that was ahead of us. This was uncharted waters for Rio Algom. It was uncharted waters for the government agencies to actually go through a serious mine decommissioning project like this. As it happened, we had a great team, both within our company and with the government agencies, and by the end of the 1990s, everybody was just amazed at how well the work had been completed, how cooperatively it had been done, how well the community had been managed, how well the workers had been looked after. And we had put in place what became the retirement living program for Elliot Lake, which actually became the new surviving force for what Elliot Lake was. Once the mines were closed, really, there wasn't no reason for an Elliot Lake to be there. But we had a lot of property. The mining companies owned most of the property, actually over 50% of the property in Elliot Lake. And we basically came to arrangements with the city of Elliot Lake to hand over that property. And they took it on, and we jointly with the other mining company put together what became the retirement living program, which has subsequently been taken over by the city of Elliot Lake, of course. And that has been the way that Elliot Lake has survived and survives very well. It's a very pleasant community. It's a very well supplied and supported community. The facilities are excellent. It's in a beautiful part of Canada. It's a great place to be.
Roger, talk to us a little bit about joining the Pele Mountain management team in 2011. You guys are in the feasibility stage on the Eco Ridge mine. Talk to us a little bit about the excitement of the community of bringing mining back to this region.
Well, as I mentioned, so the city of Elliot Lake currently is really having a difficult time coming up with a sufficient tax base to support everything that's required to manage a retirement living community. So a retirement living community actually does not have a major tax base. So it is a problem to them, and although they've managed it very well, they seriously need new industry. So the city fathers are absolutely behind any suggestion of the potential for opening a new mine in Elliot Lake. The people who've been through the mining operation in the past are extremely supportive of coming up with a new mine. They're very positive about it. The city of Elliot Lake certainly, as I say, financially are incredibly interested in having a new mine there. Pele Mountain, what happened was, as I said, I actually worked for Rio Algom. Rio Algom owned, as I mentioned, sort of many properties in Elliot Lake. And once we decommissioned them, much of the property that we handed back to the province. And this is property that Pele Mountain Resources picked up. So this is a potential opportunity to obtain uranium resources. The uranium resources were well understood, both by Rio Algom when we gave the property away, and by the government. So they were well identified. So it's not new. So the resources in Elliot Lake are extremely well documented. Pele Mountain picked up the claims that we let go. Rio Algom made a board decision that, in fact, it was not of value to retain all the claims that we still held back in 1992, based on what was then a uranium price of something less than $10 a pound. So they decided that, in fact, it was uneconomic and that in the foreseeable future, these properties were not going to be of any value to them, and they returned them to the Crown. Then, of course, Rio Algom really no longer exists. They were taken over by Billiton, who were then taken over by BHP. So BHP Billiton now actually owns the Rio Algom, and the only Rio Algom that exists actually are the closed mines in Elliot Lake. So Pele Mountain picked up many of the claims that I remember actually signing off on behalf of Rio Algom back in 1992, 1993. And it's a superb piece of property. It's extremely close to town, but not too close to be a problem for the city itself. It's situated just a few kilometers southeast of the town, just off the main highway into the city. Just 1 kilometer from the airport, we have natural gas, which originally supplied one of the mines 2 or 3 kilometers away, right there, that could be tapped into. We have the main hydro line that runs actually across the property. So as far as infrastructure, this mine is extremely well placed. We have a very supportive community. That doesn't mean to say there are not going to be some concerns. Obviously, there are going to be some concerns about many of the retirees who, have come to town who really have no knowledge of the mining operations that we had previously. But I'm quite sure that we will be able to convince them that this is a project that's worth going for, will have significant benefits to them. There are, of course, many other actual people still working in the mining industry that have families in Elliot Lake. These workers actually are into fly-out camps from Elliot Lake. So there are many people in the younger generation who are still active, who are looking for jobs, who would love to work actually back in Elliot Lake in the mining operation. So that we have a very, very good community in which to actually re-establish a mine or establish a new mine. Objections to Pele Mountain opening up the claim, just the opposite. I'm stopped more often in Elliot Lake by people saying, "Well, when is that mine going to open?" And my son, he's just coming out of university and he's doing environmental sciences, and will he be able to get a job? So there's a lot of excitement about the potential opportunities that would come job-wise to the community itself, and certainly the city of Elliot Lake is very excited about the potential for a new major tax base, which would significantly ease its current difficulties.
Well, Roger, thanks for being here with us today and for giving us an introduction to your background and the community support in Elliot Lake.
Well, thank you very much. I'm very pleased to be able to talk to you, Jeb, and certainly I'd be very happy to talk to you again.